Sir, you have made some points to prove the characteristics of God, the Almighty God. You disproved Jesus is not God. Now, what do you think about Jesus? Who is Jesus?
Okay, today's discussion, the part of the second part is who is Jesus? First, again we will split into two parts. First, what God says about Jesus. What the Almighty God says about Jesus. Let's read Matthew chapter 3 verse 17. And a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son, whom I love. With him I am well pleased." And a voice from heaven said, "This is my Son." Okay. God says Jesus is his Son. Okay. Coming to the second part. What Jesus said about himself. What Jesus said about himself. Jesus never claimed he was God. Jesus never claimed he was God. First, he introduces himself as Son of Man in Matthew 16:30. When Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, "Who do people say the Son of Man is?" Who do people say the Son of Man is? Next, Jesus tells he is the Christ or the Messiah. Let's go to Matthew chapter 16 verse 16. Simon Peter answered, "You are the Messiah, the Son of the living God." Jesus replied, "Blessed are you, Simon, the son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven." Jesus accepts that he is the Messiah. Messiah. Okay. Third, Jesus claims to be a prophet. Let's read Matthew chapter 13 verse 57. And they took offense at him. But Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own town and in his own home." Jesus claims himself to be a prophet here. Next, the fourth one is Jesus claims to be a servant of God. Let's read Matthew chapter 12 verses 18 to 21. And also I want to remind you, this is the prophecy which is repeated in Isaiah chapter 42 verses 1 to 4. Let me read it. "Here is my servant whom I have chosen. Here is my servant whom I have chosen. The one I love, in whom I delight. I will put my spirit on him, and he will proclaim justice to the nations. He will not quarrel or cry out. No one will hear his voice in the streets. A bruised reed he will not break, and a smoldering wick he will not snuff out, till he has brought justice through to victory. In his name the nations will put their hope." Let's note the top. "Here is my servant." Okay. Some may claim, why not a Son of Man be a Christ, or a Christ be a prophet, or a servant of God? Yes, I do accept, as the Bible clearly says, Jesus is the Son of God, who is the Messiah. He is a prophet, but he is not the Almighty God. Jesus is the Son of God, Christ, prophet, and the servant of God. But Jesus is not the Almighty God. Okay.